Since November 2025, three separate claims have gone viral about the judge who sentenced Nnamdi Kanu to life imprisonment. First, that someone tried to assassinate him. Second, that the International Criminal Court sent him a formal order to reverse the verdict. Third, that the ICPC arrested him. Three claims, three institutions named. Three times the Nigerian public was told that a sitting federal judge was under siege. And every single one was a lie. So I want you to hold one question before we go any further tonight. Who benefits from Nigerians believing that the judge who convicted Nnamdi Kanu is simultaneously being hunted by assassins, summoned by international courts, and arrested by anti-corruption agencies all at the same time? Because the answer to that question tells you far more about the Nnamdi Kanu case than any verdict ever will. Stay with me. Before we go further, if you're new here, Naija Update 24/7 exists for one reason: to give every Nigerian, wherever you are, whatever region you're from, the political analysis that mainstream media won't touch. Hit subscribe and stay with me. This gets deeper. To understand why this disinformation campaign exists, you need the full picture of what happened in that courtroom, not the headline, the full picture. On November 20, 2025, Justice James Omotosho of the Federal High Court in Abuja delivered his judgment after more than 10 years of legal proceedings. Nnamdi Kanu, founder of IPOB, the voice behind Radio Biafra, the most polarizing political figure in the Southeast in a generation, was found guilty on all 7 terrorism-related counts brought by the federal government. 7 counts, all guilty, no acquittals. Now here is the detail most people missed, and it reframes this entire story. The federal government did not ask for life imprisonment, they asked for death. They stood in that courtroom and explicitly demanded that Nnamdi Kanu be executed. Justice Omotosho refused. He quoted the book of Matthew. He spoke about mercy. He noted that the global trend is moving away from capital punishment, and he chose life imprisonment over the death sentence that the government was pushing for. The same judge that IPOB supporters call an instrument of persecution is the same judge who stood between Nnamdi Kanu and execution. That contradiction alone should make you pause before accepting any narrative about this case at face value. There is one more important detail. Kanu was not even in the courtroom when his sentence was read. He had been physically removed by Justice Omotosho for what the judge described as deliberately unruly and disruptive behavior. So the defining moment of his decade-long legal battle, the moment his fate was announced, happened without him present. His own conduct contributed to that. The background. This case goes back to 2015, Kanu's first arrest, his flight from Nigeria while on bail, years of Radio Biafra broadcasts from London, and then the 2021 event that became the legal earthquake at the center of everything. Kanu was in Kenya when Nigerian security operatives in disputed circumstances placed him on a plane and brought him back to Nigeria without following any extradition procedure. His lawyers called it extraordinary rendition. That argument did not die with the verdict. It now sits at the heart of his appeal. We will come back to it. But first, what happened after the verdict is the real story of this video. In the weeks and months after November 2025, something organized began to unfold across Nigerian social media platforms, WhatsApp networks, and YouTube channels. 3 waves of viral claims emerged, each targeting Justice Omotosho personally. And when you line them up against the timeline of actual legal developments, the pattern is impossible to dismiss. Wave 1. The assassination attempt. Immediately after the sentencing, a story spread rapidly that Justice Omotosho had survived an assassination attempt. It carried urgency. It felt like breaking news. It reached hundreds of thousands of Nigerians. The Federal High Court was forced to issue a formal institutional disclaimer. The language was unambiguous. The report was completely false and unfounded. An entire constitutional court was compelled to spend its credibility denying something that never happened. Wave 2, the International Criminal Court. Then came the claim that the International Criminal Court in The Hague had formally contacted Justice Omotosho, directing him to review or reverse his ruling on Kanu. This one spread further because it sounded official. It had the weight of an international institution behind it. Fact-checkers searched ICC databases, reviewed documentation, contacted sources. There was no ICC communication, no letter, no record of any kind, not a single line of evidence. And Kanu's own lawyers confirmed there was no revisiting of the case at the Federal High Court level. The story was fabricated entirely. Wave 3, the ICPC arrest. In early 2026, a viral video claimed the ICPC had arrested Justice Omotosho. The ICPC responded publicly, calling the video false and malicious, and stated something that should have ended the conversation immediately. The ICPC does not have the legal mandate to investigate or arrest a serving judicial officer in Nigeria. Whoever produced that video either did not understand Nigerian institutional law or they understood it perfectly and counted on the fact that their audience does not. 3 waves. 3 major institutions forced to publicly deny 3 fabricated stories, all within months of each other, all targeting the same judge, all timed to coincide with key moments in the legal process. That timing is not coincidence. That is a coordinated messaging strategy designed to delegitimize the conviction in public opinion before the Court of Appeal can rule on it. Now, here is what the real legal process actually looks like. On February 4, 2026, Kanu's team filed a formal notice of appeal at the Court of Appeal in Abuja, raising 22 separate grounds. The most constitutionally significant is the claim that Kanu was denied his allocutors, his constitutional right to personally address the court before sentencing. If the Court of Appeal agrees that right was violated, the sentencing could be sent back, not the conviction, the sentencing process itself. The Court of Appeal has not yet fixed the hearing date. A separate application to transfer Kanu out of Sokoto Custodial Center was struck out in January 2026 as legally incompetent. He remains in Sokoto. That is where this case stands today, at the Court of Appeal in Abuja, through legitimate legal channels, exactly where it should be. Now, if what I just told you surprises you, drop a comment below. I want to know what you think before we get to the part that changes everything. Now we move from what happened to why it happened, and this is the layer that most channels will not give you. What does a successful disinformation campaign about this judge actually achieve? If you can make millions of Nigerians believe that international bodies have already condemned this verdict before the Court of Appeal has heard a single argument, you shift public expectation, you preemptively delegitimize the conviction, and you create the political conditions under which any future pardon or release can be presented not as a political choice, but as a response to irresistible international pressure that Nigeria has no choice but to accept. That is the strategic architecture, calculated, disciplined, sustained across 3 waves over several months. Who specifically benefits? Groups within the IPOB structure whose survival depends on Kanu remaining a symbol of persecution rather than a convicted terrorist. A Kanu condemned by international institutions is more politically useful to that movement than a Kanu working through a normal appeal process. Political actors positioning for 2027. The Southeast is a critical electoral variable. Any politician who can credibly claim they resolved the Kanu situation gains enormous capital in that region. Keeping the case inflamed keeps it useful. And those who want to make a pardon look inevitable rather than political, because if the ICC has spoken, if the ICPC is investigating the judge, then releasing Kanu looks like a measured response to objective pressure rather than political appeasement. But here is the danger on the other side, and nobody is saying this publicly. A pardon for Kanu is not a clean political prize. A Nigerian analyst stated plainly after the verdict, pardoning Kanu would inflame the military, the security agencies, and large parts of the country that view IPOB's proscription as non-negotiable. The security establishment does not change its position because of viral videos or fabricated ICC letters. So the pardon option is itself a trap, and the disinformation campaign keeps that trap permanently open without anyone having to walk into it. The silent stakeholders deserve your attention. The British government, Kanu holds dual citizenship. London has the standing to raise his case through diplomatic channels. So far,
That standing has not been exercised. That silence is a deliberate choice. Igbo governors, walking a political tightrope between federal consequences and constituency sentiment, every word they say or do not say is calibrated. Nigerian security agencies, their position is fixed and institutional. IPOB stays proscribed. No political transaction changes that. Let me put the ICC claim to permanent rest with precision.
The International Criminal Court prosecutes crimes against humanity, war crimes, and genocide. It does not supervise domestic courts. It does not review national terrorism convictions. It does not write letters to judges in functioning legal systems telling them to reverse their rulings. In its entire 23-year history, the ICC has never done what that viral story claimed. Its own founding statute does not permit it. For that claim to be true, you would have to believe the ICC violated its own founding treaty and left no record of doing so. That is not a claim that deserves the benefit of the doubt. What is real is the Kenya ruling. In June 2025, a Kenyan High Court found that Kanu's arrest and transfer to Nigeria violated Kenyan law and the constitution, ordering Nigeria to pay compensation. That is a genuine international legal development, not an ICC action, but a domestic Kenyan court finding that the 2021 operation on Kenyan soil was unlawful. That ruling directly strengthens the rendition argument now before Nigeria's Court of Appeal. On the diaspora front, IPOB sent formal letters to 16 foreign embassies, the ICC, and the African Union before the sentencing, calling it an urgent global humanitarian intervention. Not one embassy issued a formal diplomatic response. That silence is not an absence of information. It is a formal position communicated through non-response. It tells you exactly how governments in London, Washington, and Brussels assess this case when required to make an institutional judgment, as opposed to how social media presents it. Now, the national question that every Nigerian must face. When a sitting federal judge is targeted by 3 waves of coordinated disinformation, and each wave goes viral before the truth catches up, what does that communicate to every other judge sitting on a sensitive case in this country? It communicates this: rule against powerful interests and your name will be attached to fabricated stories that reach millions of people before any denial can undo the damage. That is a direct threat to judicial independence. And judicial independence is not a Southeast concern or a federal government concern. It is a concern for every Nigerian who will ever need a court to protect them. The real constitutional question in this case is not whether Kanu is guilty. The court found that he is. The real question, the one the Court of Appeal must answer honestly, is whether the method of his return to Nigeria through extraordinary rendition can be reconciled with the requirements of a fair trial under Nigeria's international treaty obligations. That is an argument that deserves serious engagement, in a courtroom, not on WhatsApp. Let me close with the counter-arguments, because this channel engages the strongest opposing arguments, not just the weakest ones. The trial was never fair because of the rendition. This is the strongest defense argument, and it deserves honesty. Nigeria is bound by the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which guarantees a fair trial before an impartial tribunal. If the rendition from Kenya poisoned the fairness of everything that followed, that is a serious constitutional argument, not propaganda, a legitimate legal position that the Court of Appeal must examine with full seriousness. Kanu was a freedom fighter, not a terrorist. The court's finding was not about political philosophy. It was about specific broadcast recordings in which Kanu directed followers to attack and kill police officers and soldiers. The legal standard is not intent, it is effect. Critics argue the Terrorism Prevention Act is drafted too broadly and risks criminalizing political speech. That is a legitimate legislative concern, but it is a different argument from saying the judge got the law wrong. The ICC and ICPC are watching. False, as we have now established comprehensively. But the more important question is why millions of Nigerians found it believable. The answer is not that Nigerians are unsophisticated. It is that Nigerian institutions have accumulated a deep and often justified deficit of public trust. Disinformation finds its widest audience in environments of low institutional trust. Rebuilding that trust, slowly through accountability and transparency, is the governance work that this country needs in every region, across every community.
Whether you are from Kano or Lagos, from Enugu or Maiduguri, a legal system that can be paralyzed by fabricated stories is a threat to every Nigerian. Today, it is a judge in Abuja. Tomorrow, it could be a verdict in your own state. We started with one question. Who benefits from Nigerians believing a sitting judge is under international siege? The answer, anyone who wants to win the argument in the court of public opinion before the real court even rules. The ICC sent no message to Justice Omotosho. The ICPC did not arrest him. No assassin came for him. What did happen is that a Nigerian court concluded a decade-long terrorism trial, and that verdict is now before the Court of Appeal in Abuja through due process. Watch that process, question it, demand transparency from it, but do not let fabricated narratives substitute for the real constitutional debate Nigeria needs to have. And the next time a viral claim about this case reaches you, before you share it, ask yourself one question. Who benefits if I believe this? If this analysis gave you clarity, share it with one Nigerian who needs to understand what is really happening. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Naija Update 24/7. We never stop watching.